Hello everybody, today I'm going to be taking a look at a book from Ammo by Mig Jimenez. This time round it is volume 1 of the Encyclopedia of Wargames scenery. So here we have our book. It is a chunky piece of work, softback. As you can see, full colour, and it is running to 170 pages. What do we get in the book then? So first off, we get our collaborators, everybody who's worked on this. Published by Mig Jimenez, concept by Mig, and then we have the people responsible for the meat and potatoes within this book. Let's give them all a shout out. Ruben Grossa, he was the text and project coordinator. Edited by Ruben, Jamie Tranter and Giuseppe Ciaffelli. And then the scenery and models were done by a collaborative effort. We have Alberto Mateus Jurado, Andrea Rodriguez, Giuseppe Ciaffelli, Casper Lindberg, Miguel Vinas, Ruben Torregrossa, and Wojciech Morolauskowicz. That is probably not how that is pronounced, but I'm very sorry. However, I do think everybody should be named insofar as that's possible, because this is a superb setup for a book. Little introduction by Ruben and Giuseppe. Essentially, what it says, I'm not going to read through it all, is that landscaping and scenery building is a very important part of the hobby. It's a way to make your games stand out from the norm. However, it also has to be playable. There are a lot of really good diorama books out there, which, while it will teach you some of the techniques you need, tend to be more delicate, more elaborate. They won't hold up to the robustness of gameplay. So that's what this book is intended to do, teach you how to put together scenery and tables for your games that have either a high level of realism or, but coupled with durability, I think is the best way to put it. That's the sort of the final paragraph. Regardless of what you're looking to do, you could push these examples on further to get that sort of diorama aspect if you so desire, but it's not necessary. Our contents split into 3 sections, the majority being the actual scenery building. Part 1 is materials, then part 2 is scenery, which is broken into meadows, desert, forests, urban, fortification, water, snow and ice. So it pretty much covers everything you need insofar as putting a specific type of terrain on the table. I mean, the deserts, if they want to be Martian deserts or whatever, if you're doing some Victorian sci-fi, all of this still applies. It just means you're going to end up probably tinting the sand with a reddish brown just to get a more oxidized look to it and a bit of an unnatural environment. The final part is how to build a Wargames table. They have 2 versions in here, a simple and elaborate. The material section is, I think, one of the most interesting sections because I think people these days with 3D printing, people tend to focus on how do I get a ready-made piece of kit, to the extent that they kind of forget that it's entirely possible, and people have for years made most of the terrain for the table without requiring a 3D printer or sending away for parts. And you can do quite a lot with a lot of very simple materials, and some of which you'll probably already have in your collection. Things like foam board, expanded PVC or extruded polystyrene. They're a sort of mainstay. Balsa is great. You should always have chunks of balsa everywhere for basing, even if not for miniatures. A whole host of modelling tools, including airbrushes and files and paints and solvents. Where there are pieces of material that Mig do sell themselves, there's little QR codes that take you to them. You may find that you already have some of these, and other ones you may never have heard of and will pick up for yourself. Everybody's favourite putty Das modelling clay, so the air drying clay. So a comprehensive selection of what is used for this book, and over time, it's like most things, you can build up a collection. You may not need a hot wire cutter immediately. You've already got glue if you're putting together models and basing them. Putties you may have, Das you might not. So when building terrain, I get the materials I need for a project. And if I need a specific tool, I'll get it for that project. And then you can build your collection over years. You don't need to be rushing out and getting all of this in one foul swoop. In fact, it's probably unnecessary. So a nice selection of materials, and then we're into our scenery sections. So these have been done by some of the aforementioned notables. It's well laid out. You get the finished result, whatever it happens to be, and then step-by-step guide, including any sort of key points to look for. So you can see here this meadow is almost on the diorama side. This would be very good for placing models, showcasing models, that sort of thing. But it does show what you can do with those sheets. However, if you're looking to get into, I mean, this is an over-exaggerated version, but if you're looking to do wooded areas, then this gives you a good idea of sort of basing for around the woods, and then make the woods sort of set on pieces. Here you can see it looks quite well for skirmish games with this little hill just assembled out of polystyrene. Really good, well laid out tips, even insofar as explaining how to take pre-made things and give them a bit of a buff up. So a lot of people are buying these cheap trees from eBay and AliExpress and Temu and what have you. It doesn't take much to just sort of give them a little nudge forward. So it is what I would expect to see. A lot of things in here, if you're an old gamer and you've been in this hobby for a while, you probably know a lot of this. If you're a brand new gamer and you're just getting into painting and modeling, this takes you from the basics and you can bring it up to wherever your skill set will take it. It won't take much to get a realistic looking table's worth of terrain. And by following these guides, you can do it very quickly indeed. If I skip on, they have some interesting little addendums. So things like the MDF building here, Miguel has done. A lot of people will pick these up because they're dirt cheap. This shows how you can just take a couple of simple steps to upscale the detail on it, just improve on it in a different way, whether it's the addition of plastic card or tiling, or even just using some sort of textured paste to give you a render effect. There's a lot of interesting guides that will help. I mean, even though their Star Wars figures are shown here, because this is a sci-fi version, that's just an Adobe building. So if you're doing Mexican Wars, if you're doing Old West or Napoleonic's Peninsula Campaign, then the Adobe is Adobe. You know, it's dried mud is dried mud is dried mud wherever you go. Here you can see again what is a relatively simple ruined building in 28mm with the addition of extruded PVC on there. You can do some brickwork, re-render it, and you get just a more interesting finished article. So the book itself is very well laid out, like I say, comprehensive text and pictures throughout, and showing a variety of techniques and materials. If you've not used things like enamel washes or oils before, it explains how to use those, insofar as most of the time you're applying it thinly and then waiting for it to set in some of the solvent to evaporate, and then afterwards you can come back in and clean off the additional or the excess that's left. This has really caught my eye though. Like I say, after 40 years of terrain building and hobby, there's a lot in this book I know. This I've seen before. There's a couple of different companies that do a rust effect that is a multi-step, and this is the ammo version called U-Rust. So it's a set of 6 different oxides, I suppose you would call it, or paints with a couple of different activators. And it's fascinating to see how this stuff works. You've got your base paints that will allow you to do stippling, salt, chipping, whatever it happens to be, to get your base rust color. But then over the top, you can apply a variety of, I suppose, multi-part activated chemicals. And depending on how you apply them, you'll get the random weathering of rust, but you also get a texture and coloration. You see here some different ones. So there's 2 types. You've got I suppose 2 different types of activator, along with a base component. You put the base component down, and then depending on which one you use, you'll get either a light or a dark rust, and you can apply it in a variety of ways, including, as you show here, flicking it on with a brush, stippling it, painting it on, airbrushing, I suppose you could also do as well. And you can then layer it also. And this, I'm looking to get my hands on some of these because I'm fascinated by the realism and also the unusual effects you can get with it without having to go absolutely insane trying to do it with a paintbrush. So like I say, the book itself covers a variety of types of feature, hints and tips, be it stippling, using a brass wire brush to scuff up your cork tiles to make them look less like cork tiles when you've broken them up to use them as basing material. All the things you would expect to see in a comprehensive guide. I've not seen a book like this for tabletop hobbying in quite some time. Games Workshop had a simplified version of this, How to Make Wargames Terrain, in the 90s, and I don't think they've done one since. And it was good because, again, it was ubiquitous. It was how to make trees, how to make hills. These are all the things you may want to be doing. A lot of people are getting interested in bold action, in Conflict 47, and Trench Crusade at the moment. So being able to make bunkers, being able to make trench sections, which this book shows you, and make them in the scale that you require. So some of those games are very over-exaggerated. So picking up a 28mm scale bunker from Italieri or whoever it happens to be may not fit Conflict miniatures or Trench Crusade. But you can actually go in and go, well, here's the scale of miniatures. I need the building to be this tall for the roof to sit on. I need the doors to be X wide so the bases will fit through. You can tailor it to your own collection and your game. Tin foil. I've used that for making waves. I've never thought about using it to make a textured base, like instead of using putty, using tin foil to make your dirt and stuff. But it's incredibly light, sturdy once it's been crumpled down. And that's another thing that I'm going to be stealing from this. So like I say, there's enough in here for even the older modeler to pick up on. The last part of the book itself, like I say, the gaming tables, once we get past these, is a thing of beauty. We've got two different types, the simple table and then the elaborate table. But even the simple table shows what can be done with a few steps. If you want to make this more modular, you'd not be able to do as much coloration on the ground, which would be a more uniform look, I suppose, but would allow you to rotate tiles or flip them around in their positioning. But as it is, if you're doing just a 4x4, it's got low-level hills on both sides, and then all the set-on pieces can be shifted around within that. So you've a degree of modularity and storability. But if you have the room and want to do something a bit more spectacular, Giuseppe's done this little town centre off to one side. The plan is here, we've got a full table with the plaza, the building, the sea, everything on there. But then the town layout has been planned, so the board could be extended, and Giuseppe knows what is in those directions. So whether it'll be a more dense urban environment, a fancier merchant's quarter, or sort of fortifications off to the seawall, it's all there. So I think this might be a 2x4, which potentially means it could be increased to a 6x4 or that sort of thing. But this is using a lot of resin components, either resin cast pieces. But an interesting thing here is I'm fairly certain I have that wallpaper, which you can pick up in Ireland or the UK from the range. So if you don't have these sheets of resin brickwork, there are different ways of doing it. Get wallpaper, use it. It'll be a bit flatter. You could also pick up textured plasticard. There are a couple of companies that do it. So there are ways and means. At the end of the day, the table itself, while being almost diorama quality, I mean, it's not a million miles away from it by the time it's all said and done. It's still a gameable surface. There's still plenty of play areas on there that models can move around and interact with. But at the same time, you get to see essentially pulling a lot of the techniques from the book into this one fantastic, elaborate dock. to play through. And I mean, for any fantasy gamers, this looks fantastic. This could equally be applied to something like Blood and Plunder. You know, you still have your sloops and your small rowboats, but just replace these with a more historically accurate sort of 17th century set of buildings along the dock, and off you go. All of a sudden you're raiding in the Caribbean. So there you go, the Encyclopedia of Wargames Scenery, Volume 1. Like I say, it's a very good book. I'm curious to see where they go with subsequent volumes. It doesn't necessarily all have to be on Wargames Scenery. I suppose the next Encyclopedia of Wargames ... Volume 2 could be army building or something else of that ilk. We'll see in time, but definitely worth checking out if you've got an inkling to put your hand to some handcrafted terrain for your tabletop. The nice thing about Bespoke is you can make it exacting to whatever you need for your scenario, your game, or your army. But let me know what you think below, folks. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.